Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor. 1 Kings chapter 17, and then you can be seated if you are standing. 1 Kings chapter 17, scripture 1 on this Sunday morning, gathering November 17th, 2019. 1 Kings chapter 17, scripture 1 and scripture 8. And Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As the Lord liveth before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. Scripture 8. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon. And the scripture says, And dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. So he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering of sticks. And he called to her and said, Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel, that I may drink. And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand. And she said, As the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. You can be seated. 2 Kings chapter 4, in scripture 1. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant, my husband, is dead. And thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord. And the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons, to be bondmen. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaid have not anything in the house, save a pot of oil. 2 Kings chapter 6, in scripture 25. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the 4th part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. And as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord do not help thee, whence shall I help thee? out of the barn floor, or out of the wine press? And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, This woman said unto me, Give thy son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and did eat him. And I said unto her on the next day, Give thy son that we may eat him. And she have hid her son. And it came to pass, when the king heard the words of the woman, that he rent his clothes, and he passed by upon the wall, and the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. With these four portions of scripture of Psalms chapter 49, 1 Kings chapter 17, 2 Kings chapter 4, and 2 Kings chapter 6, in the three portions of the Kings, there is a commonality among those three portions of scripture. In Psalms 49 and 1 says, Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. In those three portions of scriptures, the widow woman, the handmaid, and the woman who had her son eaten, all three of those women are poor. I want to preach to you this Sunday morning, the poor. The word of the Lord today is the poor. The scriptures declare unto us in Proverbs chapter 14 and scripture 20 concerning the poor. Proverbs chapter 14 and scripture 20. The poor is hated, even of his own neighbor, but the rich have many friends. The poor is hated even of his own neighbor, but the rich have many friends. The poor is hated even of his own neighbor, but the rich have many friends. No one likes or loves to be poor. I have experienced being poor. Growing up in the city of Trenton, New Jersey, on the west side, born, raised up on the north side, a single parent home of only a mother and two older brothers, me the youngest of the three, and no dad. Grew up on welfare, on government substances or subsidies. And you will find out nobody in this country of America likes to be poor. People travel from all around the world to come to America, and they want to be educated, and they want to work jobs, and they don't want to be poor anymore. Nobody likes being poor. There are people who have said, I am tired of being poor. And therefore, they say they're going to do something about it. And so it is the woman that was spoken of concerning 2 Kings chapter 4. And don't forget it, the poor is hated of his own neighbor. The word of the Lord declares to us in 2 Kings chapter 4 that this woman speaks to the man of God, and the scripture tells us about her situation. The scripture says, Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha. That means her husband was a man that was a religious man, saying, Thy servant, my husband, is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord. Here is this wife declaring about her husband's reputation, speaking well of him. And the creditor is come to to take unto him my two sons to be bondmen. People that come to this country that are tired of being poor. And yes, there are those that are here that were born in this nation of America that don't want to be poor. And so people will work 2 and 3 jobs, and they will go to school and go and get into debt, and they will get credit cards on top of credit cards because they don't want to be poor. But this woman, she said, the creditor is come. Luke chapter 3 and scripture 39, the word of the Lord declares unto us concerning this truth. Consider it closely. Not Luke 3, we're going to hold it there. Consider the word of the Lord. I may give it to you and I may not. But the word of the Lord declares unto us concerning this individual that even Jesus spoke about. Jesus spoke about an individual who had nothing to pay, and therefore Jesus would declare in a parable that he was forgiven. And so when you are poor, you have nothing to pay. When you are poor, you are a person that have not enough. But not enough of the basics to live. That meaning food, and that meaning water, and that meaning clothing, and that meaning shelter. When a person is poor, they do not have the bare necessities. As it was in 2 Kings with this woman. How do you know that means poor? Well, here's a woman who is in a city that is besieged, and she is desperate. So much to the point that this woman has a woman that agrees with her concerning their son. She says, when the king says, what aileth thee? When you are poor, you are being ailed. You feel depressed. You don't have enough money to pay this bill or that bill. And if it's cold outside like it is today on this Sunday morning, the 17th of November, it's bitter cold. And if you ain't got money to pay, and they cut your lights out or off, and they cut your heat off, or they repossess your car, and you ain't got nothing that you would say that I can't get around. It's cold and I don't have no lights. I'm just so poor. The king said unto the woman, what aileth thee? And she answered, this woman said unto me, give thy son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and did eat him. And I said unto her on the next day, give thy son that we may eat him. And she hid her son. The king, when he heard the words, rent his clothes, and the king went in sackcloth. Now you don't normally see a king in sackcloth. When you see a king in sackcloth, it is something that will cause you to be intrigued. And so much to the more that even the scripture tells us concerning this aspect of the poor in Proverbs chapter 19 and scripture 4 and scripture 7 of Proverbs chapter 19. I'm preaching to you this morning about the poor. Proverbs chapter 19 and scripture 4. The word of the Lord declares to you and I, wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. I'll declare it to you again. Wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. Proverbs 19 and scripture 7. All the brethren of the poor do hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? When you are poor, you and your spouse will be fussing and fighting and arguing about money. When you are poor, man, you will be feeling real low. And so what you find out that the poor is hated of his neighbor, and the poor is separated from his neighbor, and the poor, his brethren hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? When you poor, you ain't got no money. You broke. Some people be like, I ain't got no money. And they'll pull out their credit card or their debit card and they'll swipe. They'd be like, I'm broke. I ain't got no money. See, when you poor, you don't have nowhere to live. When you poor, you don't have nothing to eat. When you poor, you don't have nothing to drink, not even water. When you poor, you don't have no clothes. And so majority, if not almost everybody I'm preaching to this morning, materially, you're not poor. You have shelter, you have clothes, you have food, you have drink, and much more beyond that. And so the scripture declares to us about this aspect of poor. In that Proverbs 19, it is clear. Wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and scripture 13 on this aspect today of poor. Ecclesiastes 9 and scripture 13. This wisdom, the wise man says, have I seen also under the sun, and it seemed great unto me. There was a little city, and few men within it. And there came a great king against it, and besieged it, and built great bulwarks against it. Now there was found in it a poor, wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city, yet no man remembered that same poor man. Then said I, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. Nobody wants to be a member of a poor church. When people experience a poor church, they'll be like, ain't nobody coming to this church. Man, why in the world we still here? They'll be like, man, that's a poor church. They ain't even got no building. They don't have nowhere. They lost that building. They don't have it no more. That's a poor church. When people that count the offering, they go count it, they probably be like, man, this ain't even worth putting in the bank. They be like, Bishop, we ain't going to even make no deposit because that offering was $5. See, when you poor, you won't even make a deposit in the bank. But yet and still in the bank, you get interest on certain accounts, even if it's a penny. So people that operate in the bank industry, they'll put a penny in on interest or a dime. But when you feel poor, you feel despised. You feel embarrassed going to the bank and saying, well, I'm going to make this deposit. And on the deposit slip, it says 1 cent. And the person look at you like, what you doing? You putting a penny in there? Just try to go to the gas station sometime and let it stop. And the gas is $10.19. And you give them a dime, a quarter, a dime and a nickel, that's 15. And then you give them 4 pennies. Or just say it came out to $10.01. You know how it is when you on that credit card, you be like, take it to whatever number. Nah, you hold it, stop right there. You be like, no. Hey, mister, that's it, no more. Yeah, I got a penny. And you'll give him a penny to fall out of his hand, fall on the ground. And I'll be like, I got another one I'm going to get. He said, I'll forget about that. You go to a gas station, you pull out a whole bunch of change. They looking at you like, are you crazy? You super poor. People don't like being part of a poor church. Well, you're going to learn something about the poor you've already have. The poor is hated of his neighbor. The poor is separated from his neighbor. The poor, his brother hates him. His brother hate him. His friends, they far from him. Because nobody like to hang out with nobody that's broke. Busted and disgusted, as they would say. I mean, you will find people that maybe get married and the woman, she'll look at him and be like, you know what? When I married you, I didn't expect us to be this poor. You know, when I grew up, I didn't have it like this. I had it better than this, but married to you, look at it. We so poor, we don't have nothing. We don't go nowhere. We don't do nothing. We so poor. I know. And the poor is hated. And the poor is separated from his friends. The poor don't have nobody. Nobody wants to hang around the poor. And so it is when people drive past a building like this, in a city like this, and they see a congregation down there, over there, and they thriving because they got cars all over the place, and big cars and fancy hats for the women, and nice plush suits for the men. And it's just a crowd, and they got a children's ministry and a youth ministry. And they be like, man, that's a church over there. They having revival. But this one over here, they poor. They ain't having revival. Nobody coming there.